Step outside in Dubai right now, at the height of the August afternoon, and the first thing that hits you is not really heat at all, not in the ordinary sense. It is more like a physical force, a wall of thick, superheated air that presses against your skin the instant the cool of the doorway falls away behind you. The air temperature stands at around 41 degrees Celsius, well over 100 Fahrenheit, but that number alone does not capture what your body is about to face, because the air rolling in off the warm waters of the Persian Gulf is heavy with moisture, and that humidity pushes the felt temperature, the heat index, up toward 46 degrees Celsius, close to 115 Fahrenheit. A level weather services do not hesitate to call life-threatening. You have 1 hour ahead of you outside in this, and over the next 60 minutes, whether you notice it or not, your body is going to wage one of the most demanding battles it is ever called upon to fight, a desperate, escalating struggle to keep your core temperature within the narrow band in which human life is possible. This is the story of that hour, told from the inside of the body itself. To understand what is about to happen, you first have to understand what your body is guarding, and how fiercely. Deep inside you, your core temperature is held with remarkable precision at around 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 Fahrenheit. The countless chemical reactions that constitute being alive, the folding of proteins, the firing of nerves, the work of every enzyme in every cell are exquisitely tuned to that temperature. The safe band is cruelly narrow. A rise of just 2 degrees to around 39 already brings the danger of significant heat illness, 3 degrees to around 40. Carries you to the doorstep of heat stroke, and beyond about 42, sustained for any length of time. The damage to cells and organs becomes severe and often irreversible. That is the whole operating range, a span of only 5 degrees separating normal life from catastrophe. Everything your body does in this hour is in the service of defending that razor-thin margin. The thermostat that governs the effort sits in a small region at the base of your brain called the hypothalamus, and in the first moments after you step into the heat, it is the hypothalamus that sounds the alarm and marshals your defenses. In the very first seconds, temperature sensors in your skin register the assault and flash their warning to the brain. Ordinarily, in a temperate climate, your body sheds heat passively, radiating it into the cooler air around you, the way a warm stone radiates into a cool evening. But here that escape route is not merely blocked, it is reversed. The air around you is hotter than your skin, which means that instead of losing heat to your surroundings, you are gaining it, absorbing warmth from the air pressing against you. And if you are standing in direct sunlight, as so much of Dubai's outdoor space demands, a second furnace opens upon you from above, the raw radiant energy of the sun pouring down and soaking into your skin, your hair, your clothing. In ordinary life, the body's problem is holding on to enough warmth. In this hour, from the very first breath, the problem is the opposite and far more dangerous. Heat is flooding in from every direction, and your body must somehow shed it faster than it arrives. Even breathing offers little escape. The air you draw in is itself hot and thick, often near your own internal temperature, so where in a cool climate each breath carries a little heat away. Here that avenue, too, is largely closed. Your breathing may quicken slightly, an instinctive and largely futile attempt to shed heat the way a panting dog does. Within seconds, before any conscious thought at all, your body has already taken the measure of the threat and begun to respond. Within the first minute or two, your body launches its opening defense, one you can actually see. Your skin begins to flush, taking on a reddened, warmer hue. This is vasodilation, the widening of the thousands of tiny blood vessels that lace through the skin. Your circulatory system is rerouting blood, pushing it out of the deep core and toward the surface, because the skin is where heat can, in principle, be shed. To drive it, your heart immediately begins to beat faster and harder. A pulse that was resting near 70 in the cool indoors climbs steadily. Almost at the same moment, your body triggers its most powerful weapon, sweat. Millions of sweat glands switch on, and within moments, a sheen of moisture forms on your forehead, your neck, your back. But it is crucial to understand exactly how sweat is meant to save you, because almost everyone gets this slightly wrong. Sweat does not cool you by being wet. Sweat cools you by evaporating. When liquid sweat turns to vapor and lifts off your skin, that phase change consumes an enormous amount of energy and draws it, as heat, directly out of your body. Evaporation is the mechanism. The sweat is merely the raw material. Here then, at around the 5-minute mark, is the heart of the danger, the thing that makes Dubai's heat so distinctively punishing. Your sweat glands are working furiously, pouring fluid onto your skin, but the humid air is already so laden with moisture that it can absorb very little more. The sweat cannot evaporate. Instead of lifting off as cooling vapor, it simply accumulates, beading, running, dripping down your face and spine, soaking your clothing until it clings to you, drenched and useless. And here is the cruel irony, that dripping sweat is doing almost nothing to cool you. The fluid is leaving your body, carrying away precious water and salt, but because it is not evaporating. It is not taking your heat with it. You are paying the full physiological price of sweating while receiving almost none of the benefit. Picture the same body in a bone-dry desert, in Phoenix or the Sahara, on a day of equal heat. There the sweat vanishes almost as fast as it appears, each bead flashing into vapor and carrying its heat away. So a person can be barely damp and yet cooling efficiently. In the humid heat, you are soaked and cooling poorly. This is the single most important thing to understand about Dubai's heat. It disables the one defense the human body relies on most, precisely when that defense is needed most. And so, quietly, inexorably, your core temperature begins to rise. By the 10-minute mark, the consequences ripple outward, and your cardiovascular system bears the brunt. Your heart is now working to push huge volumes of blood out to the dilated vessels of your skin, trying to dump heat that, in this humidity, largely refuses to leave. If you are walking or carrying anything, your muscles demand their own generous share of blood, and your brain must always be supplied. The heart is caught in a tightening bind, asked to serve skin, muscle, and vital organs at once, and it responds by beating faster and faster. A rate near 70 at rest can climb well past 100, even toward 140 under this combined load, the cardiovascular equivalent of a brisk workout, even if you are merely standing in a queue. And the conditions supporting it are deteriorating because of that relentless, non-evaporating sweat. Over an hour, an active person can lose well over a liter of fluid, and as the water pours out, the volume of your blood, which is mostly water, begins to fall. Your blood grows thicker, harder to pump, and with less of it to work with, your heart must strain harder still. You are also losing salt, the electrolytes that let your nerves fire and your muscles contract, and as their levels fall, the first cracks appear, a twinge, then a knot, in the muscles of your legs or abdomen, the beginning of heat cramps, an early signal that your internal chemistry is being pushed out of balance. Somewhere between roughly 15 and 25 minutes, many people crossing into this territory feel the first clear symptoms of what medicine calls heat exhaustion. It often begins subtly and builds. A faint lightheadedness, a sense that the world tilts when you stand, caused by that falling blood volume and by blood pooling in the dilated vessels of your legs, leaving a little too little to reliably supply your brain. A headache tightens across your temples. A vague nausea rises, worsened because blood has been diverted from your digestive organs out toward the skin. You feel suddenly weak, heavy-limbed, unusually tired for whatever small effort you are making, your skin slick and clammy with useless sweat, your pulse rapid but thready. At this moment, you are still fundamentally recoverable. Reach shade, air conditioning, water, and rest right now, and your body would very likely pull itself back over the following minutes and hours. But you are standing at a genuine threshold. And there is a particularly insidious dimension unfolding inside your skull, because your brain is exquisitely sensitive to heat. As your core temperature creeps up and your circulation struggles to keep the brain supplied, your judgment, the very faculty that should be telling you in urgent terms to get out of the heat, becomes clouded and unreliable. People in worsening heat stress often become irritable or strangely apathetic or confused about their own condition. They decide to finish the errand, to push through, precisely when they should stop. Heat attacks the organ of self-preservation, so that the very people most endangered are often the least able to recognize it. Let us say the hour continues, that for whatever reason, work, circumstance, or that clouding of judgment, you remain outside and exposed as the minutes tick past 30, past 40. Now your compensatory systems approach their limits. Your core temperature, which started at a safe 37, has been climbing, and as it pushes toward and past 39, then toward 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, you cross out of heat exhaustion toward the catastrophe doctors most fear, heat stroke. This is not simply more discomfort. It is a fundamentally different, life-threatening state, defined by that dangerously elevated core temperature combined with signs that the central nervous system is beginning to fail. The confusion that began as mild clouding deepens into genuine disorientation. The person may not know where they are, may slur their speech, may stagger and lose coordination as though intoxicated. In classic descriptions, the skin turns hot and strikingly dry as the overwhelmed sweating system finally shuts down. Though it is important to be accurate, in cases brought on by exertion, the person may still be sweating heavily even as heat stroke sets in, so hot, dry skin is a classic sign, but not a reliable one. The defining features are the soaring core temperature and the failing brain. As things worsen, the person may suffer seizures and ultimately lose consciousness, and without rapid, aggressive cooling and emergency care, the situation becomes a race against death. To understand why heat stroke is so lethal, picture what that elevated temperature does at the level of your cells. Proteins are the workhorses of every cell, and their function depends on their precise three-dimensional shape. A shape heat can unravel. As cellular temperature climbs too high, proteins begin, in effect, to cook, to lose their structure and function. Much as the clear white of an egg turns solid in a hot pan. The lining of your gut, stressed and starved of its usual blood supply, can become leaky, allowing toxins to seep into your bloodstream and trigger a body-wide inflammatory firestorm resembling severe sepsis. Your blood's clotting system can spin out of control. And organ by organ the damage mounts. The kidneys can begin to fail, the liver can be injured, the heart can falter, and the brain can swell and sustain lasting harm. This is multi-organ failure, and it is why severe heat stroke, even when treated, can kill or leave survivors permanently damaged. What makes the cascade so treacherous is its momentum, past the critical threshold. The heat itself sabotages the very systems meant to control it, so the process begins to feed on itself, which is why the emergency treatment is not gentle, but immediate, aggressive cooling by whatever means available, because every minute the core stays elevated, more cells die. Now it is essential to be honest and precise, because this full catastrophe is not the fate awaiting every person who spends an hour outside in Dubai this afternoon, and to suggest otherwise would be untrue. How this hour unfolds varies enormously from one person to the next. Consider two people stepping into the very same conditions. The first is a healthy, fit adult who has lived in Dubai for years, thoroughly acclimatized, well hydrated, dressed in loose light clothing, walking at an easy pace and keeping to the shade. For this person, the hour is genuinely unpleasant, sweaty and draining, but their well-adapted body, aided by shade and preparation, very likely keeps their core temperature under control, and they come through it tired and soaked, but essentially safe. The second is an unacclimatized visitor, newly arrived from a cool northern country, perhaps a little dehydrated, walking briskly in direct sun in heavy or dark clothing. For this person, the very same hour can carry them along the dangerous escalation we have traced. Same heat, same hour, profoundly different outcomes, determined by the state and preparation of the body meeting it. Acclimatization is a genuinely remarkable adaptation, and it explains why Dubai's long-term residents move through their summers with a composure that astonishes visitors. Exposed to heat regularly over days and weeks, the body undergoes real changes. It begins to sweat sooner, at a lower core temperature, so cooling starts earlier. It sweats in greater volume. It learns to conserve salt. Releasing more dilute sweat, and the volume of blood plasma actually increases, giving the cardiovascular system more fluid to work with. The seasoned resident and the freshly landed tourist are, in a real physiological sense, not facing the same challenge at all. even standing side by side on the same pavement. But acclimatization has limits, and some people are in danger no matter how well they know the climate. The elderly are especially vulnerable, their bodies less efficient at sensing heat and sweating. Very young children heat up faster. People with heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic conditions face heightened risk, as do those on certain common medications. And then there are the outdoor workers, whose jobs give them no choice but to spend hour after hour exerting in the heat, generating internal heat on top of the environmental load. It is precisely because of this grave risk that Dubai enforces a ban on outdoor labor during the most dangerous midday hours of summer, a recognition written into law of exactly how lethal this hour can become. There is an even more extreme frontier that deserves naming because it represents the ultimate limit Dubai's kind of heat can approach. Scientists capture the humidity problem with a measurement called the wet bulb temperature, essentially the lowest temperature any amount of sweating and evaporation could ever bring your skin down to in a given environment. There is a threshold, a wet bulb temperature of around 35 degrees Celsius, beyond which the human body can no longer cool itself by any means at all, past which even a completely healthy person, resting in full shade with all the water they could want, will overheat and die within a few hours, because there is simply no physical way left to shed heat. Recent laboratory research on real volunteers suggests the true limit may be even lower, closer to a wet bulb temperature of around 31 degrees for many people. It does not matter how fit you are, because the heat your own body generates has nowhere to go. It does not matter how much water you drink, because the water cannot evaporate off skin, the saturated air will not cool. It does not matter that you found shade, because shade only removes the sun's added load. Dubai's humid Gulf heat is exactly the kind of climate that pushes the wet bulb temperature toward these frightening levels, and while a typical bad August day usually stays below the absolute lethal threshold, the region flirts with the outer edge of human survivability more closely than almost anywhere on Earth. Let us return to the more common reality and follow our hour to a more hopeful end. Because the body's story is not only vulnerability, but also resilience, provided the escalation is halted in time. Imagine that around the 45-minute mark, feeling the warning signs, you finally reach relief. You step into an air-conditioned building, into a wall of cool, dry air. The change is almost as dramatic as the assault. Now the environment is cooler than your skin, and heat flows outward once more. The dry air lets your accumulated sweat finally evaporate, flooding you with a sudden, delicious sensation of cooling. Your overworked heart begins to slow. If you drink water, and better still a fluid containing some salt, your blood volume begins to recover. Within perhaps 10 or 20 minutes, a person who is approaching heat exhaustion can feel substantially restored. This capacity for recovery is precisely why Dubai, and cities like it, are built as vast archipelagos of cooled indoor space linked by cooled cars, an entire civilization engineered around the simple life-or-death necessity of giving the body regular refuge. The unspoken logic is physiological. A human can endure short bursts of this brutal environment, provided they can always retreat to somewhere cool before the escalation runs its full course. The danger arrives when that retreat is unavailable or delayed, when someone is trapped outside too long, or when the power fails and the cooled refuges themselves turn hot. Consider, too, what your body carries away even after you escape into the cool, because the effects do not simply vanish. You are dehydrated, having shed a great deal of fluid and salt that will take time to restore. You may feel wrung out, headachy, and fatigued for hours afterward. Your heart and circulation have been through the equivalent of a hard workout. This is part of why extreme heat is so dangerous over a prolonged spell rather than a single afternoon. Each hour of exposure, each hot and sleepless night, leaves the body a little more depleted, a little less able to withstand the next assault. In a Dubai August, the nights themselves offer little relief, often staying around 30 degrees Celsius, in the 80s and low 90s Fahrenheit. So the body's overnight recovery is blunted, and a person begins the next day already in deficit. This is how the danger compounds across a heat wave, each hot day and hot night stacking upon the last, and it is why the most vulnerable so often reach their crisis not on the first hot day, but several days into a sustained spell, when the accumulated toll finally exceeds what their bodies can bear. So when you ask what a human body goes through during 1 hour outside in Dubai's current heat, the honest answer is that it goes through an extraordinary, hidden, and largely involuntary struggle. A full-body emergency that most people experience only as the vague misery of feeling unbearably hot. Beneath that discomfort, your hypothalamus is orchestrating a desperate campaign. Your heart is laboring at the pace of hard exercise. Your blood is being rerouted and drained and thickened. Your millions of sweat glands are pouring out their futile flood against an air too humid to accept it. Your electrolytes are ebbing away, and your core temperature, the guarded number on which your very life depends, is climbing against everything your body can throw at it. Whether that hour ends in nothing worse than a soaked shirt and a powerful thirst, or carries a body across the thresholds of exhaustion and stroke toward genuine catastrophe, depends on the fitness and the age, and the preparation of the person, on the shade, and the water, and the pace, and on that most precious variable of all, the time before relief arrives. The heat of a Dubai August does not announce its danger in blood or wreckage. It works silently, inside the body, in the failing arithmetic of heat gained against heat that cannot escape. And to step out into it, even for a single hour, is to ask your body to fight a battle the climate itself has been arranged, almost perfectly, to make as hard as a battle can be.